From Channel 3, CT23 with Eric Parker.
Good morning. Thank you for being with us. It was a busy week at the Capitol as lawmakers debated how to spend and how to save taxpayer money. Joining me are two political powerhouses to update us on these budget talks. Our own chief political reporter, Susan Raff, and Dan Haar, senior editor and columnist with CT Insider. Political powerhouses.
Wow, that's very important.
Susan's a powerhouse.
So we said lawmakers looking at how to spend and how to save. I find that they like to do the former more than the latter. So what's been happening at the state capitol as budget talks have kind of moved along?
I think the interesting takeaway is that Connecticut is in a different situation than it has been in many years. We have a record surplus and rainy day fund. Years ago.
Your mic's not on, Ms. Raff.
Oh, I am so sorry. I'm going to put it on.
We're going to start again.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You have to start from the very top?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's all my fault.
That was the best I'm going to do. It's not going to be as good this time.
Oh, it's going to be better.
Will you omit the powerhouse?
No.
No, do the powerhouse line. This is no good.
Sorry about that, folks.
You got to fly away.
I forgot.
I'm Eric Parker. Coming up this morning on CT23, how will your tax money be spent over the next 2 years? That's what's being debated at the state capitol. Channel 3's chief political reporter Susan Raff and CT Insider's Dan Haar are here with what they know. And history was made late last month when Shelley Carter was sworn in as fire chief with the State Department of Developmental Services. She's sharing her story of becoming the first black female in New England to reach that rank. Plus, the Denise DeCenzo Foundation Walk for Rare Diseases is coming up Saturday. If you've seen Denise's stories over the years, you'll understand why this charity is one she would have been so happy to support. We'll tell you how you can get involved. It's all ahead this Sunday, April 23rd. CT23 starts right now.
From Channel 3, CT23 with Eric Parker.
Good morning, and thank you for being with us. It was a busy week at the state capitol as lawmakers debated how to spend and save taxpayer money. Joining me are two political powerhouses to update us on these budget talks. Our own chief political reporter, Susan Raff, and Dan Haar, senior editor and columnist with CT Insider. I tried not to laugh when I said political powerhouses. I might have giggled a little. Big stuff, and a lot of people around the state are going to have some kind of impact from these budget talks on their lives. Everyone will. So what's the latest? Where do things stand?
Well, we've heard for such a long time tax cuts are coming because we're in a very good situation right now. Strong financial shape, great surplus, rainy day fund. But the interesting thing about all of this is that there are fiscal guardrails in place. So to take a step back, in 2017, lawmakers passed a spending cap. They just renewed that. So we have a lot of money, but we can't spend it as much as we would like. A lot of that money is being used to pay off pension debt. So while there will be tax cuts, and we can talk about that, a lot of agencies in the past who have gotten no money, flat funded, this year they're like, well, we have a lot of money. Why can't we have that money? Because of those fiscal guardrails, which make it impossible.
Well, and Susan said we can talk about tax cuts, and I know you want to do that because you wrote a column that this is a big deal.
Yes, it is a big deal both optically and financially. The basic difference between what the governor wants and what the Democrat-dominated but significantly Republican-influenced Finance Committee wants on the tax cut side is the Finance Committee took the governor's half-point cut for most people, most money earned in the middle class, between about 50 and 120,000. It's more complicated than that, but the half-point cut in that, which gives people, combined with the full-point cut at the lower end, about $500 or $600 in their pocket, and they lowered that amount to a quarter-point cut, and then they added the cut for the working poor. And then they did not, neither side did a child tax credit, which we had a one-shot child tax credit last year. So that's the fight, and that's not that far off. But optically, I think a half-point cut is real, and a quarter-point cut is, the technical term is stupid. Give a half-point cut.
Well, I think the big difference with the governor's proposals, remember in February he came out with his tax cuts, and it sounded great. And what came out this week was a little bit less. The governor wanted to give a tax break, I think, to people earning up to $200,000 a year, and I think most people would agree that that's not necessarily middle class. So the Finance Committee's budget takes it back, I think, to about $100,000. And I think to Dan's point, 5% to 4.75, I'm not sure that's enough. But keep in mind, this is just a framework. And there's a lot of negotiating that has to get done before they actually vote on the entire budget.
So, of course, people who are watching are going to say, well, how does this affect me? I mean, what do we watch moving forward?
I'll give you the numbers. If you're a joint filers making between $80,000 and $150,000 a year, which is probably a lot of Connecticut, your cut under the governor's budget is about $500 or $600, and under the Finance Committee's budget, it's about $100 to $200 less. To me, it's not the money, it's the optics of having a cut of just 0.25%. You want a half-point cut because, as the governor said, what day was it, on Thursday, that he spoke about this the day after it was passed, I need to attract companies here. If I say we've got a broad-based cut, I show it to them and they see it. A complex set of cuts that even adds up to the same number isn't the same thing as having a nice, clean cut.
And the other difference, I think, in the governor's budget was that people who made $50,000 or less would pay no state income taxes. It's a little bit more in the other budget that we saw coming out this week, but I think both budgets are pretty similar, and we're going to see probably a little compilation or an agreement on both.
Now, Susan, you said at the beginning that there was a lot of people with these fiscal guardrails who might want to have money to spend, but you can't because of whatever. Who are some of those groups who might come away at the end of this budget process feeling a little dissatisfied?
I think the most vocal is the University of Connecticut, right? So during the pandemic, they got a lot of federal money. And so they've been living on that. Plus, in fairness, they also had a CBAC agreement, which is a union agreement, which requires them to pay their staff more. They wanted $450 million. Neither budget has that. I think the one that we saw this week is $190 million, but that requires UConn to share it with the other state colleges and also the UConn Health Center. So is that fair? Some say, well, they should increase enrollment. Well, it's not that easy to just get more students there. You have to do more to,
the universities
teachers.
matter. I'm going to cast my vote as to the loudest when you go over time with the nonprofit service providers. There are tens of thousands of people in Connecticut. This is not a small number. Home care providers alone, 11,000 unionized home care providers. They've gotten bump ups in the last 2 years. They need more, they say. They don't have more. They're being paid, say, $18 an hour in the case of the home care providers. Group homes, this is disability work. This is all sorts of people doing work for private agencies or as contractors themselves. That's essentially state work.
And like any other budget, you have to prioritize. So in years past, people were lucky to get flat funded, not so much, or no money at all. And so now people think, oh, we have all this money, but you have to prioritize. So where do you do it? Do you give it to the healthcare? Do you do it to UConn? Free school lunches, right? We've heard a lot about that. About during the pandemic, it was put in place that all kids got lunch. To the tune of well over $100 million.
It's about 100 a year, 90 or 100 a year.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, they have to prioritize.
So we've talked a lot about things that will affect everyone. Fuel for sure affects everyone, both the gas tax and heating fuels. There's a couple proposals on that you guys wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I think, the bigger picture is that the gas tax, which was suspended on May 1st, that will be back in full force. It's been trickling in 5 cents more. They have to do that. Keep in mind, Connecticut doesn't have tolls, right? So it's important for the roads, or that's the argument for it. There was another proposal, which Dan and I know about, and that is to tax heating oil and propane. And I think more egregious or controversial is allowing the commissioner for DEEP to actually decide what and when and where and how that works, not going to the legislature, and that's gotten a lot of bad press.
That's a bill that came up where the energy providers, the gasoline dealers, and a few others got together. They had a press conference this past week, and they said that these were going to lead to, I think it was 83 cents a gallon. Those numbers are their numbers. What the bill does is it enables the commissioner to enter into certain agreements that set targets. And that may or may not raise the price of gas because we don't know what the future market is going to look like. But in any case, that bill is endangered, I would say.
There's also something else that I want to point out, which is in the finance budget, which has everyone talking at the Capitol, and it is a tax cut proposal. It is a proposal by Senator John Fonfara on the Senate to get rid of property taxes for his home city of Hartford. Also, I think Waterbury, New Britain. He's running for mayor of Hartford. And some feel that's just inappropriate, that's buying votes, that he shouldn't be doing something like that.
And the governor was clear that he wants to see broad-based tax cuts rather than targeted. That targets neighborhoods, census tracts that have more than 30% poverty.
Not on your zip code should you be given a break. It should be broad-based to everyone.
We only have a few seconds left. Any surprise either of you are willing to predict as we come down to the wire here?
I think we're a lot closer, like Susan said. I think we're a lot closer. This is not an overtime budget. This is going to be an agreement, maybe even ahead of time. What do you think?
We're going to have a tax cut package, certainly, and I think in a couple of weeks they will vote it. And I think there will be a lot of people who will be happy. There will be people who won't be happy. But we're certainly in a better place than we were several years ago.
All right. Well, they said you're powerhouses. I barely had to even ask you questions. Excellent job with the segment. Let me know if you need me next time.
All right.
You can read Dan Hart's columns on ctinsider.com. They're also published in newspapers. If you're an old-fashioned newspaper type, you can find them in all those newspapers there on your screen or ctinsider.com.